Greetings. In this video, I'd like to go ahead and begin to outline Lonnie Athens' violentization theory as it applies to sex crimes during genocides. One of the things that I will integrate into this discussion is the concept of domination, which Lonnie Athens has integrated into the symbolic interactionist theory. We can begin to take a look at different types of force that is used to dominate different individuals or groups, such as Lonnie Athens points out in his 2010 article, economic, material, physical, fear-based, and humiliation methods used as force to dominate other groups. And I think future research will need to focus on how specific techniques of domination are used during stages of the genocidal process, which I use from his violentization theory stages. And we might ask if domination is used differently by specific institutions or groups as we examine several case studies. What I'd like to do, though, is to first outline Lonnie Athens' stages of violentization, this process. The first stage is the brutalization stage, where the person is taught how to carry out violent behavior through observing others. And indicators of this stage related to sexual violence would be such behaviors as making threats to the person who is going through the brutalization stage that they could become sexual assault victims. The person may be horrified from witnessing sexual violence. The person may be coached how to carry out sexually violent behavior. They may also be told that they have a personal responsibility to carry out sexual violence. They may be a victim of actual sexual assault. And they may hear about former stories of alleged sexual victimization against the perpetrator group. And they also would begin to recognize in some cases that they may lack power to prevent sexual assault from occurring. And this stage then, this brutalization stage then may lead to what is called the defiance stage, where there is a presentation of a belief system that supports violent sexual behavior. Some of the indicators in this stage would be, for example, that the perpetrator group begins to define a specific group or individuals as targets for sexual assault. The perpetrators may also present sexual violence as an alternative to deal with these usually mythical and false threats from a particular victim group. The perpetrators may also present situations where sexual violence is encouraged and actually labeled as an appropriate and desirable response, and the person within this group may begin to actually believe that they should use sexual violence in the future and that it is beneficial for their group, and they begin to construct justifications for carrying out sexual violence. And then this may lead to the third stage, which is called the violent dominance engagements. And this stage basically focuses on threatening others and carrying out violent activities. Indicators of this stage applied to sexual violence would include, for example, segregating the victims for sexual assaults, directing individuals or groups to carry out sexually violent behaviors, engaging in sexual violence to test out the results, threatening to punish those who do not engage in a violent sexual behavior, and also being rewarded from peers for engaging in violent sexual behavior. Once this stage is completed, it moves into the fourth stage, virulency, which is where the person or group define themselves as violent and dangerous, And as related to sexual violence, the group defines themselves as sexually violent people, a sexually violent group. The group instills high levels of fear among the victims due to the threats of sexual violence or actual sexual violence that has been carried out. And the perpetrators attempt to demonstrate that they are the dominant group, and they do this by humiliating and instilling fear and shame in the victims. The perpetrators may use sexual assaults to demonstrate their power and control over the victims as well. Certainly at this point, the perpetrator group is viewed as very dangerous by others, and they self-identify themselves as sexually violent individuals. Myself and my colleagues added a fifth stage that we called extreme virulency, which accounts for extreme group violence during genocides that includes behavior such as torture or the mutilation of bodies and sexual trafficking and slavery. Basically, in this area, which I first pointed out in my analysis of the Rwandan genocide, indicators would be carrying out sexually violent group attacks against another person or a group in order to torture, humiliate, mutilate, and kill. These actions are similar to the ones that observed among sadistic lust killers described in the criminal profiling literature. In addition, Lonnie Athens developed the concept of the phantom community, which is kind of a sounding board that people use to make sense of themselves and others. And within this genocidal phantom community, we have a support system for sexually violent behavior. In much of the criminal profiling literature, we see individuals often are engaging in violent sexual behavior in the rape and sexual assault literature. And in the cases that I have here in the three genocides, the Holocaust, the Rwandan, and Bosnian genocides, we have group sexual violence. And this may be very different from the violence that we see in the criminal profiling cases. And this is my brief introduction to violentization theory applied to sex crimes during genocides.